Speak now. Speak now. Speak now. I'm going to propose that I bring Jon Gagnon up to talk about Sundance Commons. Sundance Commons provides land access tools, education and resources for new farmers facing barriers to entry into agriculture. Jon Gagnon is excited to be part of this event. CLTs offer an alternative pathway to affordable housing and farmland preservation with perpetual access in mind from the start. As a collaborative farmer, I have lost my place, dedicated to issues of equity and agency for potential and current ecological farmers. He's always more than happy to share his experiences and what he's learned from them and their potential. So what I'm going to propose is Jon's going to come up and talk, and then we got all our food here. So Martin, who couldn't make it from the Ontario Farmland Trust, is going to talk about agrihoods, which is connected to this sort of farming thing and how you can do both on land, address the affordable housing issue and address food security and also conservation things. So because it's a presentation, maybe you guys can snack during that, because I feel like some of you might be a bit peckish. Okay, go ahead. Take it away.
Okay, I think I'm going to try karaoke style. Nothing like presenting between food or right before food. I will speak as quickly as I can. So a little bit of background. I've been in different collaborative community farms for about a decade. I've farmed at eco-villages, visited eco-villages, done food to table where there was weddings on site, but there was farmers there as well. And so I've only ever known kind of ecological farming in a community kind of base, whether it was hippies, anarchists in an eco-village, or posh kind of food to table kind of situations, or family farms that were kind of just inviting friends and build your tiny home and don't let the neighbor see it, all sorts of various things. And I love them and I love everything about it, but there was a few things that always came up problematic as it relates to farmland access and new farmers. One of them being incubator farms, so the idea of you're incubating a new farmer so that they could sometime in the future then start their own farm. There's power dynamic problems that happen with that with the landowner if they're a farmer as well, and there's priorities in terms of tools and access, and I've seen that play out. There's aesthetics in terms of farm being kind of your serene retirement idea of what you'd like it to see and what it actually is, especially right now when you're planting nonstop. That's why I'm so red. Also unpaid internships where you're having young people learning about farming, but maybe they're working some extra hours, maybe their housing is inadequate, and in some cases their sweat equity is helping you pay off a mortgage that gives you long-term equity. I found that kind of problematic, and that's happened, and that happens. And yeah, generally also the educational component of it. Are you coming from a family farm where you have the privilege of learning from grandpa, or are you maybe from an urban environment, or you want to learn, but there's not really that much access for small-scale ecological farming, like Aaliyah was at one of the farms that I was at that had an incubator farm. That's how I met Aaliyah years ago. Amazing farmer. And so I've been having these conversations for years. I lived at the eco-village from 2012 to 2017 and still kind of lived in different communities. And then I started chatting with Cheyenne Sundance. If you know, you know. She's quite a maverick, if that's the right term, in the small-scale agricultural world, fighting for fair wages, fighting for, urban ag and what it looks like to have growing space that is equitable and accessible, especially for people that face barriers to entry into agriculture, which are many, especially outside of huge urban areas. And the first message, obviously it was on Instagram, the first message that I sent to her was, I think community land trusts are one of the best ways in which you can tackle this land access issue and build equity and agency for new farmers that are never really realistically going to be able to purchase a farm. That's why every winter, all my farm friends, we talk about going out east. And that dream's kind of gone. It's like East Coast, Nova Scotia. So Cheyenne and I started talking about this for many months, and then we went on road trips. So we did visit some community land trusts in Nova Scotia, as well as some incubation programs in Quebec. So somewhere the municipality owns land, and then a nonprofit manages the leases and leases it out. And it was great. They had 5-year leases, which is pretty good to start up a business, but it still doesn't address the fact that you're not going to save up enough for down payment by being the best market gardener ever. And so the speculation on land is always going to outpace the best tomato, zucchini grower. You know, the price is the price. No frills is no frills. So what does that look like? And so we talked about it for months and months, and if not years. And a few months ago, started talking about actually creating a nonprofit, which turned out to be Sundance Commons, which is kind of trying to address some of these issues that we saw, especially for farmers or aspiring farmers that face barriers to entry in agriculture, especially peri-urban and urban environments where the rent is even higher than the $200 I paid for half an acre at the Eco Village. There's other problems there, but it was affordable. Did all my talking, don't know how to move forward. It's not the arrows, eh? You would. Oh yeah, okay. So Sundance Commons is an agricultural nonprofit that operates at 4 farm locations currently in southwestern Ontario, mostly in the GTA, Greater Toronto Area, or outside of it. We provide the tools, the guidance, and access for new farmers who face barriers to entry in the agricultural sector and land access more broadly. So land access more broadly, because we do want to leave space for people growing medicines, people just wanting to reconnect to land, many things of that nature, but also for people that see farming as a potential career that they would like to at least see if that's their career for them. It's such an experiential and tactile industry or career that you're not going to know until you know. And many people can't just afford to test it out. And there's a big difference between backyard gardening and community garden plots and farming as a market gardener as a profession. And so we are trying to create the space for people to take a stab at that and have low risk barriers to entry for them, and we can manage our leases, we can manage the marketing, we can manage the markets and everything that might be a little too overwhelming. Because that's one aspect of small scale farming, is that it has a entrepreneurial independent spirit, and we're trying to bring a more collaborative spirit to it, a kind of co-op model from other industries into agriculture, which sometimes gets into the rugged individualism, can get into the rugged individualism where it's my idyllic homestead and I do my market gardening, which is beautiful, and I don't disagree with it, but it's not going to address the food insecurity issues we have to deal with over the coming decades, not to mention the farmland access and farmer succession situation we have to deal with over the next decade. Many of you probably know the amount of farmers that are retiring, and there's not a decent replacement rate for them, and it's mostly because of inaccessible land access. So currently we have 4 farms. So we have one at a charity just near Nobleton and Bolton, north of Toronto, about 35 minutes away. We have one in Rouge National Park. That's just very small. We have just 3 members there. One of them has bees, and then the other is doing some flowers, and Cheyenne is there doing some squash. And then we're at Ignatius Jesuit Center in Guelph. Kind of interesting because they're all kind of different. So Ignatius is off-grid, so we have to bring up in our water, we have to purchase water. We have solar panels because Yusuf is there doing chickens, and other people are doing crops that don't need to get watered every day. So it's not a great place to maybe do lettuce. But we're in our first year of operation, so we still, we know that there's people that want to get into livestock, and so we felt that Ignatius would have been is a good location for things of that nature. And then Woodbine Racetrack has a community garden area, and they put out a call for proposals to take it over. During the pandemic, it was no longer being managed, so it has a small greenhouse. It's a very small area, but that's where we do most of our educational programming because it's transit accessible. Some of our workshops. So Sundance Commons secures the land access, as mentioned, trains new and aspiring farmers to develop careers and enterprises in the agricultural and food industries through our short-term and long-term programming. So we do have ad hoc kind of workshops that we'll do on weekends, but we do, I think it's the next slide, more workshops. Yeah, so currently we have 12 farmer members. So some of them are just doing, 500 square feet. Some of them are doing up to a quarter acre. Some are like, we want to do flowers. We want to see if this is a business model, and you know, we want to go full tilt. We're ready. They might have other jobs, but they're like, we know we can do this. Some of them are just kind of putting their toes in. Is that the same? So all sorts. Some livestock, some bees, some vegetables, some flowers, any sorts, and mushrooms as well. We also receive funding from Ontario Trillium Fund to do a new farmer training program, and this is a more structured curriculum, so this is something that we're hoping can at least help people get to paid work in agriculture without having to do an unpaid internship. So it's 15 different workshops over 15 weeks, and we have 2 cohorts of 20 people, 20 students each year, and we have that funding for two years. So that'll hopefully create 80 potential agricultural laborers that don't need to necessarily do unpaid internships. Or another thing I didn't mention is the isolation of going to work on a farm and you're by yourself, you don't have a community. So we're trying to bring the community of landless would-be aspiring farmers together, and through events and through doing educational training at these different farms. Yeah, so we have 12 current farmers that are at different spots, and we manage their leases. So we have some 2-year leases at some of our locations. Some of them are just memorandum of understanding, you know, very basic template of like what your responsibilities are managing the land. And then our cohort get a weekly, and they get online one-on-one mentorship if they want to like make a business plan, or you know, even is this a side hustle? Is this where do you see agriculture fitting into your life moving forward? And we have some webinars, and as well as we will create over the 2 years. I hate the term masterclass, but we're definitely going to do something worker class, one of those online video series libraries that you can teach and watch in the winter. So yeah, that kind of just mentions it. There are 2 different training programs that are a bit different. So our farmer members kind of will get a bit more on-site specific advice, just because every site's a little different: soil quality, water pressure, water type, deliveries of where they would sell and whatnot. So that's part of it. Yeah, so our 3 tenets I've already kind of mentioned, but we incubate new and aspiring farmers to provide the educational component necessary to thrive, the tools to boost productivity, and the markets to offer fair compensation for crops produced. We provide seasonal agricultural training at no cost to new farmers. And we purchase, install, and aid in collective use of needed tools and infrastructure for our farmer members, such as irrigation systems, silage tarps, landscape fabric, walk-behind tractors, and walk-in coolers. Many things like a walk-behind tractor, it's basically a rototiller that you can put different implements on. It can cost $15,000. You don't really need it every day, so we handle the transportation. We do the training on how to operate it safely, and then we'll make sure that they have it at the time, and we check the weather, we coordinate. Oh, it's actually that rainstorm passed you, but it's gonna hit you, so we're coming to you this weekend. We'll set that up. So that's kind of leveraging the pool we have of all our resources, Cheyenne's resources from being a rock star farmer for a few years, and just kind of pulling those together so we can be a motley crew of farmers supporting each other. And this is a future goal. This is something we're currently working on. This is where the CLT model will come into effect, community land trust model. Work with each farmer to ideal lease arrangements. Part of what interests me in the community land trust model is the fact that you can get equity building, and you could own improvements on land or infrastructure. So a farmer who may not be able to own land, but maybe they could own that greenhouse, and if they left, there'd be some equity that they can get back if they did leave that farm, or if their lease ended or whatever. So we're slowly researching that. There's some groups like Agrarian Commons, Agrarian Trust in the US that we have a few meetings with that we're really pulling from in terms of different lease arrangements where you can get kind of capital for return for that sweat equity put into ecological land improvements that don't necessarily yield crop, but help the farm and help the ecology and help all of us. Yeah, so a big part of our 3 guiding tenets, as mentioned, would best be used by, or best achieved and strengthened by securing the land in perpetuity. So a big part of this is agency and equity for the farm laborer, whether that's a 30-year lease, whether it's a 99-year lease, whether it's a deed to productive farmland. We do believe the best farming decisions are based on people that work the land and know the land. And that's a very big component to our mandate, is to try to develop that. Researching this winter community bonds and other mechanisms to own deeds or to raise capital so we can get to that place. I've had many talks with people, retiring farmers that maybe don't have children that would be interested in selling their farm for way less than the speculative real estate value and seeing what that looks like. There's also ways to stretch out that down payment term, so maybe you just lease land, but then you're looking at that housing. So there's ways to stretch it out to make it more accessible for a different people that face barriers to entry that can't afford a down payment. Yeah, so that's about it. The Commons was started to meet the needs of new farmers who would like to start their own farm enterprises with community support, with an emphasis currently on urban and peri-urban locations. We have had meetings with municipalities all over Ontario and a bit in Quebec, but right now we're aimed outside the GTA. Our long-term aim is to secure farmland ownership to ensure this accessibility and education in perpetuity so we can do long-term things, more livestock, fruit, orcharding, a lot of things that people are interested in, but you need long-term access to be able to do it economically. And those are our contacts.